Hey guys, so NaNoWriMo is finally upon us. We're in the midst of the chaos. Well, technically we're still in the early stages of the chaos, but the myths are coming. Anyway, so I figured this would be a fun time to talk about our characters. Now, this isn't going to be a how-to plan your best character kind of thing, because Preptober is over now. It's a little bit late for that, but this is just going to be a little look into the steps I personally take to write my characters, how they start off from being little specks of ideas and grow into what will hopefully become a relatable, fully fleshed out individual. So if you want to follow the steps and see if your process is any similar, or if you want to try and make new characters based on this way, that is completely up to you. I am not really an advice blog kind of person, but if you want to take this as advice rather than just an insight video, then by all means go ahead, but you've been warned. This is just my process, it's not going to work for everybody, so let's just jump right into it, shall we? This is a look into how I plan my characters. Side note, kind of loving how this is a video about characters while I'm wearing a shirt of one of my favourite characters, the sweet, adorable Penny from the Rooster Teeth series, Ruby. If any of you have seen this series, comment below on who your favourite character is. If you haven't seen this series, then by all means watch it. You are in for a whirlwind of a time. Anyway, sidetracking. So, how we look into characters. Now, me personally, before I start thinking about characters, I usually have the premise, at least the premise set out. I don't want to dive into making a plot just yet, because it's hard to write a story when you don't know who the story is happening to. So if you have an idea in your head, so we're going to be using my Nano story for example. I'm not going to go into a lot of details on the plot of this one, just because it's my story, you can't have it. So the premise of my story was that a mysterious event happened which resulted in leaving a group of children orphaned. Now, they were told that their parents were part of an unhealthy group of people who may have been terrorists. The details are really sketchy, no one for sure knows what happened that night. Years later, after they've been separated, they are somehow called back to each other now as adults to find that their parents' work is A, not finished, and B, is not exactly what meets the eye. Also, demons? Yeah, there is so much more to it than that. I'm not diving in with just that in mind. That is just the very bare bones basic premise that I came up with. I now have a full-scale plan. I'm hoping it will be finished. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, so now I had that premise. I was like, well, okay, great, that can open a lot of doors. It's a little bit on the cliche side, but that's what planning is for, to make this cliche into something that is hopefully a little bit more unique. But in order to do that, you have to have some pretty unique characters. Because I'm always in this mindset that you can have a story that is as simple as a stream of consciousness, as a person or group of people take a trip up to the local shop, or they're just having a catch-up. Something as simple and everyday as that. Not necessarily the most intriguing of stories, but if your characters are realistic, entertaining, and have a strong personality and play off of each other really well, then that's going to be an entertaining as hell story. That's going to be a fun group of people that you get to follow. I'm just in that mindset. Characters to me are more important than the story, but they're not the be-all and end-all. Anyway, another tangent. So, as I said, I usually have this premise in mind. So now I have an idea of the bare bones, but where's it gonna go? Who's it gonna happen to? It's just, when you have it that way round, it's just a better idea of understanding the world that you've started to create, and what kind of people would fit into that world, what kind of people wouldn't fit into that world, which one are you going to go for in order to push your story along. So it just creates a boundary, I suppose, of what you're able to create and what you're able to reach for. It's just that kind of balance, in my head anyway. At the start, I do not have, when I come up with a character's name, I don't automatically have this light bulb moment of, ah yes, this is your name, this is your profession, this is exactly what you've been doing with your life since you took your first breath. And here you are now, fully fleshed out and ready to go. I wish the muses were that kind to me, but no. I start off with the barest of bare bones. I mean, specks of what were once bare bones. So let's take one of my characters from this story and branch out from there. So we're looking at one of the main children, now adult, who has gone through this trauma. She's been away from everyone for a while, and here she comes, she is back. So got it up on my laptop here of what I had first compared to what I have now. So when I first I didn't even have a name for her, it was just lead female 1. So lead female 1 later turned into Vanessa. So yeah, so lead female 1, human, dark hair, green eyes, olive skin, question mark, sarcastic, question mark, age 22. Likes running. Yeah, that's all I had to start with. That is not a character, that is a Tinder profile at best. So I did that for the main cast. So there are 6 main characters altogether, and I pretty much did that for all of them. It was barely 2 sentences, it was thrown together. Nothing really added up, and I didn't know how they were going to act with each other or what they would grow into being, but at least I had a starting point, which is where, obviously, everyone needs to start. Quality content right here. So I had the bare basics ready to go. Now what do I do with it? Of course, you build on it. You look back and you see what you've written. So for Vanessa, I did go with the olive skin tone because I thought that would go really great with dark hair and these vibrant green eyes. But then I thought, vibrant green eyes, that's pretty much things, so I dulled them down a little bit to now like a mossy green colour. Instead of just plain dark hair, I don't know why I'm doing this because this light is making me look like a redhead. So rather than just dark hair, it's dark, tight, ringleted hair, which would look gorgeous, and you can imagine that being in like a full action scene, these ringlets flying everywhere, how the dust will cling to the curls, how she has to, you know, maybe tackle it back when she's thinking, just stuff like that, and just grow with it. So she likes running. Okay, great, that's a great hobby to have, but why does she like running? Well, she's been in and out of a foster system since this event. She doesn't want these people pretending to be her family. She has full faith that her family were not the bad guys back then, and she wants to prove it, but she was just a kid back then. She doesn't have all the information. Now she's older, she's able to get that information, but she doesn't know how, so she just keeps running. She keeps going and going and going until she can find it. Okay, so that means she's determined, she's stubborn, she doesn't do well with people. How's that going to impact the rest of the group? So once you have this mindset of this character and things start just coming together into an actual human being, and you can understand why they're acting this way, what happened to them to push them to this point, what they're aiming for. So for Vanessa, she's running from a past of lies, she's running towards the truth. But is she going to be ready for that truth? Who knows? That's what the story planning's for. So once you have this sort of idea for all of your main characters, that's when I move on to my next stage. So I have a premise, I have the character fleshed out, I know where they're going in the story. At this point, I'll probably go over the story planning again, just to see how it's going to fit in with these characters, how they mesh together. And then I go on to one of my favourite parts of character planning, and that is how the characters link together. So 3 of the main 6 were the children from the beginning of the story in the premise. However, they were separated and now they're living very different lives. How are they going to be drawn back together, and what is going to happen after being away from each other for so long? Are they still going to just jump into this friendship? Are they just going to be a bit off with each other? Are they going to band together to search out the truth, or is maybe one of them just doesn't want anything to do with this anymore? And then you've got the other three, two of which, without going too deep into spoilers, because I've already, as I said before, demons aren't really of this world. They have a lot to learn themselves, and yeah, they do have secrets that are linked to the parents. And then there's the one who seems to have no connection to everything else that's going on, and yet seems to know way more than they're letting on. How do they all link together? That's the thing, if you can build a realistic character, then that is fantastic. That's going to help you so much further down the line. But if you can create relatable and realistic relationships, that's going a whole step further. To do this, sometimes I'll write a few practice scenes. This is where it goes to the pantsing thing, where now I have this ensemble ready to go, but I'm quite sure how they're going to act amongst each other. So I have a few practice scenes. I just let the imagination run wild. I just pants it, see what comes out of my head onto the screen, and see where it goes from there. From that point, I can pinpoint relationships. I can see how things are going to develop. I can see how things started. It's a nice little way of just not only you getting to know your characters, but letting your characters get to know each other, which sounds a bit insane because they're not real people, so how can you get to know them and how can they get to know each other when you're the one in control? But as any writer will tell you, the characters do have a habit of taking control. That's always fun to try and clean up that mess, but anywho. So you have your premise, you have your characters, you have how they relate to each other. What's next? What do your characters want? Everybody has a goal, a motivation, an aim, something that just drives you. Even if you aren't really sure what you want to do in life, you still have a bit of an urge to find out what that might be, to find your calling. If you find a hobby that you enjoy, then you want to go after it. If you find that there is something out there that you want to do for a living, then that gives you a push to go and do it. But likewise, if you find that something is threatening that or is putting you down, then it's an obstacle, it's something that you want to get over in order to go where you want to go. So your characters need that too. Your characters need to have goals, they need to have aims, they need to have motivations. And then once you have that aim, goal, motivation, you can work it into your plot. So yes, using Vanessa for example again. She has a motivation that she has been lied to her whole life, and now she has, hopefully, again, who knows, spoilers, I ain't giving much away, don't know what this is, but she has the potential to get answers. They may not be the ones that she wants, but it's the truth, and that's all she's after. She wants the truth. She doesn't care how she gets it. Other characters, on the other hand, are perfectly happy with how their life turned out. Yeah, sure, the whole event was traumatic for them, and they're still being affected by that, but overall, where they ended up, they're pretty comfortable. So when they're suddenly thrown into this situation that is risking all of that, rather than wanting to fight to get the truth, they are fighting to put things back the way they were, and it's that conflict that will drive the story forward. And there's so many others. Like I said, there's 6 main characters. Each one has an aim and a goal and a motivation. Not all of them get on with each other. It's going to cause conflict. And conflict mixing with a goal is what is going to just rocket your story forward. So you need to make sure that you have this down. Something else, briefly mentioned it a minute ago, threat. I also mentioned this in a different video with outlining. You need to have a good level of threat for your characters as well as your story. Again, I'm saying all this is you need to do this and you need to do that. This is just a way of that's just a force of habit. I'm not telling you what to do by any means. I'm kind of using this to also talk to myself, so yeah, sorry if that's how it's coming across. I just wanted to point that in there. The characters do need to have some kind of threat. If something is threatening to take answers away from Vanessa, that's going to drive her forward, or is it going to crush her emotionally? You need to find this out pretty soon, otherwise any final fight that you come across, whether it be a literal fight or otherwise, isn't going to have that impact because it's just going to feel very passive, I guess. So what is the threat? What is the thing that is going to threaten your character's goals? How are they planning to overcome it or avoid it? You just need to have a good threat to really sink your teeth into. You don't necessarily have to have all the finer details pinned down early on, but the sooner you do get them done, the better it's going to be all around. They can change. Like I said, characters do have a habit of taking over every now and again. I mean, but as long as you have a foundation to build on, then things are going to be a bit better. This was something that only recently became a light bulb moment for me. And that is, who do you want your characters to be at the end of the story? At first I didn't really know what to make of that because I thought, well, of course every character has to go through development and they have to grow in order for the story to progress. They can't go around believing the same lies for the whole story, because then when the big reveal happens, it doesn't really feel earned, I guess. They need to have seeds of doubt along the way before the truth is revealed, and it can still hurt them, but at least they've grown, they've become less naive, they've become stronger. That's just one example. So although you spend so long trying to get these characters pinned down exactly how you want them and know exactly how they're going to progress in the story, how they work off of one of each other, what their goals are, what the thing is that's threatening that, once you have that down, you kind of think, well, what else is there? I know how this character is going to progress. But at the same time, the character you start with is not going to be the character you finish with. Let's take an example from an actual published work. So let's take Harry Potter, for example. Anyone who knows me will know I'm a massive Potter fan, so bear with me on this one. So, Harry Potter. But let's not focus on Harry Potter because his story is obviously very well known. We know the story he takes. 11-year-old Harry Potter going up against Lord Voldemort in the 7th book would be a completely different ending, I'll tell you that much. So we know how much he's had to grow and how much he's had to learn in order to develop to that point where he can go face to face with Voldemort and understand him enough to take him down. But then we look at other characters like our dear beloved Neville Longbottom. In the first book, he is... Don't get me wrong, he tries to be brave, but he is just completely incompetent. He is an absolute sweetheart, I will never ever deny that, but he can't do magic like the others. He has had a really horrible, horrible past that has made him feel like he's not worth being in this amazing magical place, but he still tries. So then when he's at the 7th book and he's this, rallying the troops, wielding a sword, badass, it's got so much more of an impact because he has had all this time to grow and become brave and realize what he wants to fight for, how he can fight for it. It's just this blooming personality that even though you fell in love with him at the start, that's what makes you proud of him at the end. So you need to figure out who your character is going to be at the end of the story. Otherwise, the whole story itself is just going to feel like it hasn't been worth it because the character hasn't changed. They haven't gone through an arc. They haven't learned anything. They haven't developed. So who you start with is not who you're going to finish with. And you need to figure out who that's going to be. And after all of this has been discussed and written down and expanded on, we do the most tedious thing ever, which is practice, repeat, practice, repeat. Yep, that's pretty much it. You look at everything you've written down, you look at the practice, you look at the development that you've planned out, you look at the story, how it fits in with the characters, you've written out a full story plan of the development that these characters are going to go through, the threats that they're going to face, how they're going to overcome them, what their goals are and if they achieve it or not. And then you go through it all again to add more detail, and then you do more practice scenes, and then you add more detail because things have popped up in those practice scenes that you didn't realise before. It is just practice, repeat, over and over and over again, and it is never going to be perfect. I want you to remember that, because there is no such thing as a perfect character. There's no such thing as a perfect human, so why should there be a thing as a perfect character? Everyone is flawed, everyone has weaknesses, everyone has been given some kind of false truth that they need to overcome later down the line, so why shouldn't your characters? If you've gotten them to a point where they're going to be completely OP, then that takes away the threat aspect. If you already start them off where they're going to finish, then that takes away their goals and motivations. You need to have this balance of flawed characters that are relatable and still fit into this world. Or if they don't fit into this world, why? And are they trying to fit in or are they not? You need to have this balance between well-written and flawed, practice, repeat, but not perfect. It can be a tedious process, I'm not going to lie, but at the end of the day, it is fun because it's like you get to just go crazy with it, and by the end of it, you may not know these characters inside and out or know them like they're your best friend or something like that, but that's still what makes the writing process interesting, because even when you have everything planned out, sometimes new little tidbits of information pop up that you can rearrange later on during the editing process. And it is kind of fun seeing how your characters can just grow in front of you and sometimes take control. You can take this as an advice video if you want to try and do things in my chaotic all over the place way. If not, then that's fine. I just wanted to make a video on how I plan my characters. And I'll end that video here before I go on any more tangents. So, happy writing guys, good luck to you, wishing you all the best. Bye!